Every plant you see in this garden was started from seed. No nurseries, no transplants. And the reason why they go from seed to sprout so fast comes down to one thing. And I do something at the very end that no one's talking about. You are gonna know exactly how to start all of your seeds indoors so that you never have to go to the nursery and buy starter plants ever again. All right, so what do you need? You are going to need a dome with a seed tray. You're also gonna need some pots. You're gonna need some dirt, of course, and the tags, the garden marker. A garden marker is really, really important because it's gonna allow you to put these little tags outside and the sun is not gonna eat up the ink. If you just use like a regular marker, not gonna work. So a garden marker is what you need, and I'll have links down below for all of these things. Of course, you're gonna need some seeds, you're gonna need a dibbler, and you're also gonna need some seed starting mix. That's really, really important. Not potting soil, just seed starting mix. You're gonna need some water, and then you're also gonna need 2 things of fertilizer, and I'm gonna tell you exactly what they are. This is my secret sauce, and we're gonna talk about that in just a second. Before I tell you how to use it, let's get these seeds into the trays. All right, so I'm starting with this EB Stone Organics seed starting mix, but you can literally just use whatever's at the hardware store or the grocery store. What matters most is not what soil mix you're using, but how you prepare the soil. All right, so your soil should be slightly moist, and I'll show you the consistency we're gonna be looking for. I'm just gonna dump this in here. I like to use a big tray from Home Depot so I can stay clean in my space here. All right, so the soil shouldn't be too moist or too dry. What you want is when you hold it in your hand and you squish it, it should kind of take the shape of your hand. So as long as it's clumping like that, you should be good to go. If you need a little bit more water, that's why we have the hand pump. So what I'll do is I'll just give this a quick little spray. And then you'll just basically mix it around until you get the consistency that you want. And then once the soil is the consistency that you want, what we're gonna do is we're just gonna put them in these little seed trays. So I have used the seed trays in the past that are, you know, those ones that are kind of stuck all together, like a 6-pack or a 12-pack or whatever. I've used those in the past, and I don't really like them as much because you're kind of stuck germinating them all at the same time. These ones allow us to basically have a sprout come out, germinate, and then I can go and put it in the garden and transplant whatever I want one by one. So I love these little seed trays by Bootstrap Farmer. And what you're gonna do here is you're just gonna put it right into their little accompanying tray here. And then once you're done, it's super easy. Like if I go out into the garden and then I plant the little plant outside, I just pop this right into the dishwasher to disinfect it, and I can reuse them over and over and over again. So it's a really, really great investment. So what I'm gonna do now is I am going to fill up all of these. I think this is a 32 tray. So I'm gonna fill up all of these, and once we're done, we're gonna go ahead and start labeling. Now let's talk labeling. So I label before I sow, because if I don't, I'll forget. So here in zone 10, I can plant year round, which means I can plant in succession, meaning that I can start one tomato today and I can do another one in 4 weeks, which is awesome. But the problem with that is that I may have all of my seed trays going, which means I have all of these plants, different plants, and if I have 4 or 5 seed trays going, it's basically like having 192,000 tomatoes all here right now. So it's really, really hard to keep track, and it gets super confusing. But the downside is that I may have 4 trays running all at once. And when you have it like that, you may have, I don't know, hundreds of different seedlings and they all look the same. So essentially, it gets confusing. So sowing in succession requires labeling. So now that all the tags are labeled, I am gonna start seeding. So I'm gonna use a chopstick because I lost my dibbler out in the garden somewhere and I have literally no idea where it is. So no matter what instrument you use, what you're gonna wanna do is make sure that, rule of thumb, is if you have a seed, however big the seed is, you're gonna wanna go twice the depth of that, okay? So these are pretty big ones, these are black-eyed peas. So I'm just gonna go ahead and make a little dibble here with my chopstick, maybe in this case about like 1 inch deep, and then just drop the seed in like that. Super simple. And while I'm doing this, I wanna talk a little bit about why I don't buy starts from the store anymore. So the first reason is variety. So When you walk into the nursery, you may see like 5 or 6 different types of tomato plants. If you're lucky, maybe 10 to 12. But if you go online and order your seeds online, you can actually get hundreds if you want to. And so that's what I do, not hundreds, but what I do is I go online and I'll get maybe like 12 different types of tomato plants. I'll cycle in new ones every single year. And when you do that, you have an infinite variety of tomatoes that you can use, or, you know, fill in the blank, whatever vegetable or crop you want to do. But if you go to the nursery, you're stuck with whatever they have. So I live in zone 10, and the issue with zone 10 is that most people's spring starts in April or May. We actually never stop. So here we grow all year round. So even the best nurseries around here get their plants super late for us because they're all grown for people and nurseries in cold climates. So by the time we get starter plants here in zone 10, we're like 3 weeks away from the plant bolting, frying, or dying in the sun. And it's just too late for us. So starting my seeds indoors actually allows me to get ahead of that timeline. So I can start my seeds right away inside. And by the time I put them outside and succession plant all year throughout the year, I can harvest something from my garden every single day of the year. So the third reason is price. And depending upon where you get them from, seeds run about $5 for maybe 24 plants or so, fully grown. But if you get them from the nursery, then you're gonna be paying $5 per plant. And they're literally doing the exact same process that I'm doing right now, but because you've outsourced it, you're gonna pay more. So the fourth one is pests and diseases. And this was an absolute deal breaker for me personally. When you live in a warm climate like we do, let's say zones 9 through 11, the soil actually never freezes. So what that means is that everyone else in the world gets a reset in wintertime, but since we never have a frost, the pests in our soil never die. I once bought a 6-pack of celery starters from the nursery, and unbeknownst to me, they had root knot nematodes, which I found out the hard way what that was. So what happened was for like 6 months, I was spreading the soil, I was using the same tools, I was composting, all of these things contaminated all of our soil. So by the time the warm weather came, we started pulling stuff up like carrots and all different kinds of things like beets, whatever. And everything was galled. Like, I mean, it was like mangled. It was a mess. It was disgusting. It was gross. And I was like, what's going on? Our potatoes, everything. It was so bizarre. So I started doing some research and looking it up, and I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, we have root knot nematodes. I don't even know where this came from because we used pure soil, and I realized right where we had planted a celery, a 6-pack of celery, that's where the problem had started. And so long story short, I had to make a really tough decision of, do we dump the soil in our raised beds that we paid a lot of money for, or do we just deal with it? Because there's no way to eradicate it. You can only mitigate. So after making that decision, we decided to dump the soil, and that was a massive mistake. So to be frank, it was a $7,000 mistake off of a $6 6-pack of celery. It was not worth it. And sadly, that wasn't even our worst experience. So we also bought another pack of starts from the nursery, and it was some catmint. It was beautiful. I didn't know what this was at the time, but it was infested with leafhoppers. Now, leafhoppers thrive in zones 9 through 11 because they come from Europe in a Mediterranean climate, and they attack all of your herbs. So I had an entire row of rosemary, I had lavender, I had all of these things. They were so beautiful. I'd been working on them for years. And the leafhoppers got out of the transplant that I planted in the front yard and proceeded to breed and go everywhere. To this day, it's been years. To this day, I am still battling leafhoppers all over my entire garden. These little like white specks I see like in my basil and my even peppers, my parsley, all of my herbs, everything, even now my carrots. So it's been really, really frustrating, and needless to say, I decided at that point, I am never buying starts from the nursery ever again. So learn from my mistakes and start your own seeds so that way you know exactly what's going into your soil from day one. And that's it. So just make sure you do 2 seeds per cell and you should be good to go. Now let's talk about fertilizer. All right, so this is what you came for. This is my secret to getting seedlings to be healthier, germinate faster, and really thrive when you put them outside in the garden. Everyone waits until they put the plants outside to start fertilizing. I don't. So I actually fertilize them right now so that they have everything that they need to grow strong and healthy while they're still in these cells. I fertilize everything in 2 ways, and I'm gonna show you what that is. There's a dry and there is a wet. So first I use a time-release fertilizer. So this is by a company called Osmocote. And what you're gonna do is you're just gonna basically put 1 to 2 of these in each little cell like this. And what this is gonna do is this is going to release fertilizer over time. So maybe about a month or so, it'll fertilize each of these little cells even after you put them outside. But for sure, it'll start right away, right when it hits a root, it'll go ahead and fertilize the seedling right away. And the reason why I use Osmocote is because it is gentle. So it's not gonna burn your plants. And I use a special formula that I'll link below. And essentially it's just their vegetable and flower one, which is made specifically for fruits, vegetables, and flowers, anything that's like edible, which is what we have here. This will give every single one of these seedlings all of the nutrients that it needs to be able to thrive like right from the start. So that's really, really important to do. So I'm gonna go ahead and put 2 to 3 of these or 1 to 2 in every single tray. All right, so then what I do is I add a couple drops of this Super Thrive as a wet fertilizer. Now the Osmocote, again, is a time release. So the point of that is to release it over time, over the next month, but this one is really fast. So this is gonna focus on less on the nutrients and more on leaves and roots so that the leaves and the roots grow super, super fast. And this is perfect. You only need like 1 to 2 drops, and I have it for like this whole entire thing here. So I'm just gonna screw this back on. And what I'm gonna do is kind of just wet the top with it. Just give it a good little shake to mix it up. And then I'm just gonna spray over the top really lightly. Now, using these 2 fertilizers is what allows me to transplant all of my seedlings like on day 3, as opposed to week 3 or even month 3 in some cases. So I just go ahead and give it a little spritz, just spritz the top, just like this. And you wanna use a spritzer because the seeds are really delicate and you don't wanna disturb them. So just wanna make sure that the top of the soil is moist, and that's it. And again, I'll have links for all of this stuff in the description below. The last step though is kind of important. So we wanna wet the seedlings from the bottom. And again, we don't wanna disturb the soil because some of these seeds are really, really tiny, really, really small. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna lift this up. And again, the beauty of these Bootstrap Farmer trays is that they come with this little tin here, so I can actually lift all of them up at the same time. And it has another tray down here, which allows me to pour water in. So I'm just gonna go ahead and lift it up, and very carefully, because I normally spill during this process, is I'm going to pour the water in. Just gonna fill it all the way with the rest of the water down here and let it soak up through the dirt. Just drop these in like this. And there's one last step that's probably the most important of all. So if you're in a warm climate, you have to use a dome. In zones 9 through 11, the heat dries everything out, especially if you live in a desert. So put the dome on top of your tray before you put it under any light. Once the seed sprouts, you can move individual cells out and they don't need to be under the dome anymore, but until they sprout a seed, so until you see some leaves, keep the soil moist and keep it under the dome. And that's really it. I have grow lights with a built-in timer to emulate day and night, but you don't need them. You can literally just put this by a sunny window while you wait. In about 3 days, you're gonna see the seedlings sprout. Sprouting seeds is so much fun to watch. I've done this 100 times and it never gets old. And if you want my help to help you plant your first or your next round of seeds, we do this every single week together inside of my gardening community. It's designed for warm climate gardeners who want to sow and harvest things from the garden all year round. Links in the description if you want to join us.